Hello, and welcome to Amputee for Life, created to focus on members of the limb loss community and those who support them. We will feature testimonials from amputees, family members, and professionals working within the limb loss community, and include strategies, ideas, and heartfelt stories in the hope of providing greater awareness around the lives of some of the most amazing and resilient people on Earth. My name is Jared Taylor, and I will be your host. Thank you for joining us today on Amputee for Life. I have a wonderful guest with me today, Sandra Giorgetta from the great state of Colorado. Welcome, Sandra, to Amputee for Life.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really thankful that you reached out and wanted to be a guest on the podcast. And I really appreciate our short conversation we had the other day to gather some more information from you. And as I mentioned, I like to keep the preliminary introduction short so that we can actually delve in a little bit deeper and have a more natural conversation during the episode today. With that being said, you had mentioned to me at the age of 21, you were involved in a motorcycle accident, which resulted in a left below knee amputation. Do you mind giving us a little bit more information about that experience?
Well, I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks. The doctor told me he was going to do his damnedest to save my leg because I was so young. And I did have 2 or 3 surgeries before it became evident that they needed to go through with the below the knee amputation.
How did that make you feel getting that type of news at being just 21 years old?
Well, at first, I did have this sort of panicky feeling, and then this just calmness came to me, and I don't know if that was some sort of divine intervention or not, but I did, and I'm not a super religious person or anything, but I did have that sort of this calm feeling came to me that, you're going to be okay. Of course, the first thing that I thought was, I'm not going to marry, I'll never have children. I was very concerned about that. And I was slated to go to school at USC to study engineering, and I wasn't really thinking anything about, how's this going to affect my education or my career or anything. I was just really worried about not being able to be a mother and dating.
That's valid. I understand why you would feel that way. But with that being said, you mentioned to me in our phone conversation that you did meet someone who saw you for who you are and married you, and you're still married today. How did you two meet, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, we met in college. I was thinking about it, and I think one of the things that just coincidentally, my husband had a roommate who was an arm amputee, and he played the trombone in the USC marching band, which is, to get into that band at USC is a big deal. And so for him playing with one arm and my husband getting to know him, and he didn't wear a prosthesis, so I feel my husband probably had some desensitization to just the appearance of an amputated limb. But so we met at a party. He asked me to dance. And then there was a couch. We sat down on a couch. And this is kind of a funny thing because, when I was in the hospital, I had the hospital chaplain came in to discuss some of the things I was concerned about. And I said, how do I tell people I'm an amputee? And he said, it'll just come up in the normal conversation. And so were sitting on the couch, and my husband was sitting on my left. And he was going to put his right hand on my left knee where my prosthesis was. I just like did not want him to find out like that. And I just instinctively did this like karate chop, like block. And he grew up in California, and I was from New Mexico. We talk about it now. It's like, wow, I thought, boy, these New Mexico women, they're different.
Oh, I love that story. And so you did the karate chop move to deflect his hand on your knee, but obviously it probably didn't take much longer for you to reveal that you were an amputee.
We went on a few more dates, and then finally he asked me, he goes, well, I noticed your left leg is a little stiff. Back then the prosthesis was basically made out of wood. And so then, I told him, but, it didn't really faze him. Uh, he wanted to know why I was an amputee, and I guess for him it was if it wasn't congenital, so it wasn't going to affect my future, bearing children, um, or anything like that. I guess he thought it wouldn't matter. He enjoyed my personality. He liked the fact I was studying engineering, and he has other people in his families who are engineers. So just he didn't really think it was going to be that much of an issue.
And apparently it hasn't been. And you've raised three boys together, correct?
Yes, three sons.
And you've been married how many years now?
Well, we got married in 1983, so 43.
That is amazing. And it's wonderful. And your kids are all grown, and you have grandchildren now, and everybody loves grandma. And I want to bring up the point that you had mentioned to me in our phone conversation that have been an avid skier your whole life, and that you actually taught your sons and your husband how to ski, correct?
Correct.
And skiing as a family, as I've experienced growing up and skiing as a family, is just one of the greatest ways to enjoy each other's company and build lasting memories. So I really love that.
Skiing was my love. I mean, that was one of the things I asked the doctors when I was in the hospital. I said, am I going to be able to ski? They said, well, you're young and you'll just figure out how to do whatever you want to do. If you want to do it badly enough, you'll just figure it out. So I pretty much had that sort of attitude stuck in my head. I kind of told my prosthetist, what different things. I took my skis and my boots into my prosthetist, and I said, I need to have some forward lean, and I want this and that. So my prosthetist said, are you sure you want to ski? You could get hurt. And I was like, no, I'm sure. So now the first time I skied, I decided I would take a lesson in case something bad happened. At least somebody would be there to pick me up. So I took this lesson, and the guy, he goes, oh, we'll just go. I'm like, shouldn't we start on the baby hill? He's like, oh, no, let's just go straight up to the top. Because it was in, at Purgatory Ski Area in Durango, and there was an amputee racer female that skied there, so he was very confident that I'd be able to ski. So he took me up to the top of the slope, and he goes, okay, well let's just see what you can do. Let's see how it goes. So I made a left-hand turn, which I'm on my right ski, which is my good side, and everything's fine. Then I go to make a turn on the left ski, and I just fall down. So then, but he was really nice. He kept telling me, just smile, it'll make you relax. But he goes, well, I think what we should do, says, I can tell what kind of style of skier you were before. I think what we should do is we need to teach you a different style. We need to teach you more of a racing style. You need to really use each ski individually. You need to get all that weight on your left ski. So he retaught me how to ski, and then I met my husband and I took him skiing, and then we took our boys skiing. My two oldest kids were close in age, and we put them in ski school. My youngest, he did not want to go to ski school. So I was like, well, we're going down the hard runs and you're just going to have to follow us. He said, I can do it, I can do it. And of course, he was a little miserable there at the beginning, but he figured it out. So we were skiing kind of slowly when the kids were learning, and then they all picked it up and they were all skiing faster. And at one time I was like lagging behind, and I was like, Sandra, you better pick it up. You're not going to be skiing with your family anymore.
I remember the days that we bypassed my dad and would leave him in the dust, and we'd see him on the lift as we were going down the hill, and it kept going like that over and over. But he didn't mind; he loved to ski. No, I love it. I love the story and the aspect of being adaptable, because that's something I've found as an amputee. The mental blocks that could stop many of us from pursuing things that we used to enjoy or even learning new things. And that being said, I being an avid snowboarder, I still haven't made it up to the mountain. I have this mental block on how I'm going to be able to do that. But on the other hand, I mean, I really desire it. On the other hand, I've learned Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and I work with a coach who specifically helps me learn how to do leg locks and headlocks and things that would work for me as an amputee. And I appreciate his time and dedication in helping me learn these things because it's it's new to him and to me. But I've been excited about it, and I got into it because my youngest son is in martial arts and he really enjoys it, and I keep going and watching. And I thought, well, why am I not doing this too? I always had a desire to learn martial arts, and here I am as an amputee learning martial arts. And I found that there are others out there that do this, and I've been watching their YouTube channels and just really enjoying something new and finding that we can do anything we put our mind to, whether we're missing a leg or an arm. It doesn't necessarily matter. You mentioned your husband's roommate who was a trombone player with one arm. That's pretty amazing to me. And as you mentioned also, it's not easy to get into the USC marching band. There was always high standards there, and that's just an amazing story in and of itself. Now, I want to get back to asking you where you feel like your strength to persevere came from after your amputation. I don't know how long it took you to don a prosthetic, but as individuals, we all grieve in different ways, and especially as amputees, we go through a whole nother level of grief when it comes to losing a limb. And I'm wondering what, if you could share with us, worked for you and what didn't work for you, and how long maybe that might have taken.
Well, I had a unique high school experience that I think prepared me. In the 70s, a lot of all boys schools started accepting girls, and I was in the first class of girls accepted at an all boys school, and it was very controversial. And there were teachers and parents of families of the boys that didn't want girls. So there was a certain amount of adversity in that experience, and it was a much higher academic standard than the public schools I had been going to. So just going through that experience of having to overcome the prejudice and having to rise to the academic challenges, I think uniquely prepared me. So now, because my accident was in Miami and my hometown was Albuquerque, New Mexico, and this occurred during my junior year of college, and I was in the process of transferring to USC to study engineering. So after I left Miami, I went to Albuquerque, and I didn't get into a prosthesis right away because in Miami they said, oh, well, you should go to your home state to work with the prosthetist there. And then when I was in Albuquerque, I realized, well, I'm moving to Los Angeles to be at USC, so, if there's a problem, it would be better if I used somebody in Los Angeles. And then I had a friend of mine whose father's a doctor said, oh, you should go to Rancho Los Amigos in LA. So that's where I went. So I think my accident was in April, and I think it was in August before I was fitted with my first prosthesis.
Wow.
The approach back then was very much of a team approach. You had a physical therapist, the prosthetist, a physician, a doctor, a psychologist. So they tried to get me to sign up for therapy, so I agreed to go to one session, and the therapist said, well, let's talk about how you're feeling. And I was a little bit in denial about, I just was like super strong. I didn't want to admit that I had needed any help or anything. I just was like, I came from a family of like being like independent was a value that my parents had, being super independent. So the therapist said, well, we could talk about other stuff. We could talk about school. Well, I was a really good student, so I was like, well, I don't need to talk about school. I'm a straight A student. He goes, well, you could talk about boys or something. I'd already picked up a boyfriend on the first day of school, so I was like, well, I don't need any help in that department. I'm doing fine. So it wasn't until years later that I sought out some counseling. But I got into the prosthesis. I had some physical therapy and pretty much just learned how to walk right out of the gate. After I finished my engineering degree and I started working, I was working at this building. They had buildings that were really popular back then that were sort of like glass, the exterior, and you could see your reflection. And where I parked, I had to walk along this building to the other building where my office was, and I could see my reflection, and that's where I really learned how to walk, getting that feedback, that immediate feedback, watching myself walk in this kind of mirror.
A lot of us would be very self-conscious about that, and I'm not saying that you weren't, but you were able to take that experience and say, I'm going to use this to my advantage. And I can tell that about you. You have definitely leaned into your independence and the value that was created growing up, and you've been able to excel. You had a career as an electrical engineer, and you also mentioned that you became a certified therapist due to one of your sons being dyslexic as a child. And tell us a little bit more about your experience as a professional and as well as an amputee.
Well, being a woman in the 80s working in a male dominated environment wasn't exactly very easy. I have some stories, a lot of kind of funny stories, but so one morning the all the men, for some reason, said, "Oh, Sandra, it's your turn to pour the coffee this morning." And I kind of was like aghast. I was like, "What do you mean pour the coffee?" And so I really didn't know what to do. I was like, so I just decided, oh, I'll just go along with it. So I poured everyone's coffee, and then I was kind of laughing to myself, thinking, oh, if they want to pay me, professional engineering salary to pour coffee, well, the joke's on them. But I went home and I was telling my husband about it, and he said, okay, this is what you do, Sandra. Tomorrow you'll go into the office and you tell the men it's their turn to pour the coffee. So I go in the next morning, I said, okay, whose turn is it to pour the coffee today? And they all looked at me and go, well, I guess we should all pour our own coffee.
Amen to that, right?
Yeah, but I think like as working as a professional, I don't think that my being an amputee really affected anything in terms of because I was sitting in an office. The only thing is, I did one time, I had this engineer, I was working in an upstairs office and he was downstairs. He wanted me to walk to another building to get this tape and then deliver it to him. And I think at first I had said yes, and then I forgot. He came in my office and he got mad at me, and I was like, whatever his name was, I said, you can get your own tape.
It sounds to me like maybe the challenge was more being a woman working in the men's professional world, like you mentioned in the 80s, as opposed to being an amputee.
Yeah.
Sounds like they were trying to really test you out and what you were made of, and you showed them. It sounds like. How about your experience as a certified language therapist and working with children?
That was a lot more fulfilling than the engineering. I enjoyed the engineering, but the as a certified academic language therapist, I opened up a business in my house, and I did small group reading instruction for kids with dyslexia, and I just really enjoyed providing that service to the community because it was a very needed service, with lots of kids needing help and not being able to get the appropriate help within within their school system. So so in terms of being an amputee, I mean, I wore shorts. The kids and the parents knew that I had a prosthesis. If anybody had a question for me, I was very happy to answer the questions. And I don't think anybody really thought, oh, I don't want to bring my kid here. I think I don't think they really thought too much of it.
I can appreciate that. I've volunteered in my son's school for the past couple of years, and he's in fourth grade now. I've worn shorts many times, and the kids know that I wear a prosthesis, and uh, I've welcomed their questions. Children are honest, and a lot of them have their own ideas, and it's great to be able to hear what they have to say and provide the feedback, to their inquiries. Because I don't ever recall knowing or of an amputee growing up or having any kind of experience speaking with an amputee until I was flying to Baltimore for one of my surgeries prior to my amputation, and I met an amputee in the airport, and I approached him and told him a little bit about what I had going on, and he shut down pretty quickly. I don't know. Maybe I rubbed him the wrong way with my questioning, because I knew at that point that I was headed towards amputation, but I hadn't wasn't an amputee at the time. So, of course, he probably, maybe he was just having a bad day and I just took it really kind of personal. But it made me think about being careful about what we say to people. Not everybody is open to talking about their disability or whatever the case may be. And I wanted to get back to something that we talked about on the phone, and that was about support. As a new amputee, I don't know at what point you went to uh, a support group, whether it was in New Mexico or California or in Colorado, but you did mention the group Amputees in Motion, and then you ended up becoming the president of that support group. Was it called the Share and Care program? Am I correct there?
Yeah, the group is Amputees in Motion. It's still around. It's in San Diego, California. Just before I moved from Los Angeles to San Diego, is when I started seeking more support. One of the things that I most wanted to achieve was to be a parent, and I was pregnant, and it was the happiest time of my life, and then I had a complication, and I lost the baby. And I think I had met an amputee, and he made this comment to me about, I guess his attitude was that, he had been dealt this bad card, and that the rest of his life, like that was his one bad card, and the rest of his life, he was going to have good hands. He was making kind of like a poker analogy. And so I guess that had gotten in my head, and I was feeling like, nothing else could ever happen in my life that would be worse than losing my leg. So it made this false, sort of unrealistic protection. And so when I lost that child, I realized, there's no get out of jail free card here. Life still goes on. There's still going to be ups and downs, and this isn't going to be something where now I'm immune to the rest of ups and downs. So at that point, I started unraveling a little bit, and that's when I sought support. So I found out or heard about a support group in the LA area, but then I was moving to San Diego, so I looked into that, and I went to the support group, and I found it not very supportive, not meeting my needs. So I weaseled my way into the group, became president, and tried to reform the group a little bit. And I sent out letters to local psychologists and said, would you be willing to donate 1 hour a week to lead a share and care session, so that it would be a safe place for amputees to share their honest feelings, or if something was bothering them, or if they wanted to talk about anything really related to their situation. So I found a psychologist. He came in. I felt more comfortable having a professional there. I noticed that the support groups, at least here in Colorado now, the support groups are more geared around activities and being active. So they want to go paddle boarding or hiking, but for me, I felt like there are a lot of people that aren't there yet. They're in a wheelchair, or they're not walking. And those people are the people that probably need the most support. And so, from my point of view, I was feeling like I wanted to provide um, a safe environment for the people that were hurting the most. And so part of that means like having a place where there's handicap parking and easy wheelchair access. The group here in Colorado they want to meet at like a park. It's hard to get around and on grass if you're in a wheelchair. So that's what I did, and I found different people to come and be guest speakers on different things. There was something that was supposed to help for phantom pain, and it was this magnetic uh, device that you put on, and I don't remember the name of it, but I had the person that did that came and spoke. And I had there was a group in San Diego that provided scholarships for sports activities, and I had that person come and talk about what they provided. I probably had one day I did like a mini ACA thing. I had 4 or 5 of the local prosthetists come, and they made little tables with um, different information about their prosthetic practice.
I really love that you realize the importance and of the new amputee, or not even the new amputee, the one who is still wheelchair bound or for whatever reasons and aren't able to go paddleboarding or go play pickleball or go for a hike. That is so essential because until we find our footing, so to speak, we feel pretty lost as amputees. And some of us are in that state for a really long time. And we need to be mindful of where everyone's at, and they're not all in the same place that we are. And this is a community, and this is how we found each other through the Amputee Coalition. And I believe it's an amazing organization, and I appreciate hearing what you did for your support group, Amputees in Motion, and reaching out to everyone that was involved. Question for you: where do you see yourself as limited, if you do at all, as an amputee versus limitless?
I feel limited in that my whole quality of life is so dependent on quality prosthetic care, and I don't enjoy feeling dependent on other people. And I've seen the quality of prosthetic care change a lot, and not for the better. I've seen the products improve. I have had the ability to do some prosthetic tune-ups myself, which I'm blessed that I have some mechanical kind of abilities. But I guess that's where I feel limited. When I have a good fitting, comfortable, well-working prosthesis, I feel limitless.
I understand how that is true. I'm 9 years in as as an amputee, and I've been through so many sockets, and I miss a couple that I used to have that really fit great, and I'm not there right now, and I have to go in between three different sockets that I have now. And I wish it wasn't the case, but it's just the way I've shaped down and the challenges I have. But truly, I know what you mean, feeling limitless, being able to run, which has always been a goal of mine, getting back to running. And I finally got back there about a year and a half ago. But now, due to the way my prosthesis fit, I'm not running. And then it's discouraging, but I remind myself that maybe the next socket will fit better and I'll be able to get back to it. So we do have our limits, and it's important to push through those and make it work for ourselves as well. So if you had any kind of advice that you could give to other limb loss individuals that are struggling with feeling really limited, what kind of hope do you think that you could give?
Well, one of the things that I try to do when my prosthesis is not fitting is if you really, there's always going to be stuff that you want to do with a good fitting prosthesis, but if you really think about it, there's still stuff that you can do that you enjoy that don't involve needing the best fitting prosthesis. Um, so for example, I mean, I like to work out, I want to stay in shape, but my prosthesis isn't fitting right. Like, what can I do? Well, I can still swim. I can ride a stationary bike. There's a lot of mat exercises, so to speak, that, you're down on the floor that you can even do without your prosthesis. Um, but I mean, there are things that you can do also. I happen to enjoy music, and I remember when I first lost my leg, before I even got my prosthesis, I spent a lot of time playing the piano, and somebody gave me a recorder. It's kind of like a flute, and I learned how to play that, and I had a guitar. Um, so you find things that you enjoy so that to help get you through those periods. If you wanted to, maybe in another program, I mean, I can tell you some of my opinions about finding the right prosthetist.
Well, fire away. I mean, what are some of the tips? Because I do notice a lot in the Facebook amputee groups and in the coalition forums that people are struggling with finding the right kind of help or someone that they feel is in their best interest.
Yeah, I know. Well, so one of the things is that this is just opinions. The prosthetists that live and work in large metropolitan areas are going to have access to more patients. Therefore, they're going to have more practice. Therefore, they're going to probably be better at what they do. I mean, if you go to somebody who's in a really small town and maybe there's 5 amputees in the town, I don't think they're going to gain the proficiency. Now, maybe you're lucky you live in a small town and somebody used to live in LA. They got all the experience and they come to your town. Well, that would be nice. But so one of the things I've done before is they have the destination facilities. Like there's the one in the Savalich Center in Oklahoma, and there's one in Virginia. there used to be one in the Seattle area. I'm not sure if it's there anymore, but the destination facilities, that there's a drawback to the great thing is, you go and they build your prosthesis, you get it done quickly. The bad thing is that if everybody's body is different, and they tend to have work with certain parts and fit everybody with the same thing. So I'm pretty sure, I don't know about now, but at one time Savalich, they basically did all Autobot parts. So I mean, if you happen to be a person that those parts work well for you, then that would be a good thing. Now for me, my problem is I'm short. I'm 5'3.5", and I don't have as much clearance. The build height, the distance from the floor to the bottom of your residual limb, I don't have as much as the average. The average amputee is probably male, 5'10". So I found that for me, what I would like, what I want, if I could be queen for the day and what I want is a more customized, very personal device. I want the interaction between me and the prosthetist to be where he's asking me what I want. I want it more service oriented. So most of the way it's set up, the prosthetist is like the professional, and then the amputee comes in and the prosthetist asks them a few questions, and then they make a professional decision about what product you should have. But I feel like there's a little bit of a conflict of interest in that they're also getting paid for the device they're making, so there might be some incentive to just build the most expensive device. So some prosthetic facilities are going to send everything away to a lab where the stuff is built somewhere else. I think it's better I like going to a prosthetic facility where they build the stuff in-house, because I feel that's the only way you can get a truly custom device. Because if they send it to a fabrication facility, everything's going to be fabricated exactly the same.
Right. My prosthetist has been telling me that they're moving into 3D printing for socket fits, and he's feeling that that's really been an improvement in the way that they're able to fabricate their sockets.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I haven't had one done like that yet, and plus he says the turnaround time is a lot quicker also. And I would really like that because it seems like a lot of times when I'm casted, by the time I get the test socket, I've already changed in my size. I have a lot of fluctuation from, like a lot of us, from morning to night. So it all depends on what time of day I'm being casted in order to determine whether or not the sock is going to fit well.
Now, I was told that the best time to get casted is in the morning,
Yes, that's what I found as well.
but it's the communication between the prosthetist and the amputee that's the most important. If your prosthetist doesn't want to listen to what you have to say, that's not a good sign.
Well, it just means you need to speak louder. I think the most important thing that we can do as amputees in that scenario is advocate for ourselves. Now, my prosthetist has lots of experience and works with many amputees, but my doctor that I've had for the past 16 years and have kept throughout the 9 years as an amputee, I'm his only amputee limb loss patient, which I find is interesting because he has a background as a naval doctor. But really, I've had to educate him on so many things, and it's been okay. I really like him, or else I would have found someone else. But it has been challenging to get him to understand what my needs have been as an amputee throughout the years. He gets it now, but it was challenging for a while. So I like what you've had to say. I truly understand. Yeah, big cities, people have more opportunities, but elsewhere in the country, we gotta search harder. And I would just admonish our listeners to not give up and to keep trying and doing their research and doing the best they can with what they have, like we all need to. One last thing I wanted to ask you, and that was you've been an amputee for many, many years. Do you have any new life goals or aspirations at this point?
Oh, um, well, about 8 years ago, I started playing tennis. Well, not just started playing tennis, I played tennis my whole life, but there was a, you've heard about wheelchair tennis. There were a group of people in around the world, around the globe, that wanted to create a new category for uh, for playing tennis, that where you don't have to use a wheelchair, you can play standing. They call it adaptive standing tennis, but now they have changed the name to para tennis. And so there'd be different categories for different people based on, just like the Paralympics, based on your disability level. And so I was involved in that. I had to give it up, but I just recently took up paddleball, pickleball, not paddleball, pickleball. So, I mean, there's always new stuff to learn and to have fun with.
I have a history in playing tennis as well. I played through high school. I love tennis. I haven't really had a partner to play with, but I have taken up pickleball also with my 9 year old, and I'm waiting for him to level out on his frustration level. But it's okay and it's fun. But I really enjoy just getting out and hitting the ball and learning something new. It's a good challenge, and I like the fact that the court is smaller. That works for me. But yeah, it's great. I love it. Now, I've never heard of the para tennis before, and I'd like to look into to how that actually works. I'm sure it probably works a lot easier than wheelchair tennis.
They're trying really hard to get it recognized as a Paralympic sport. That's the goal. But there's a couple tournaments. There's been one in Texas every year. It used to be in Houston. Last year it was in Dallas. There's a tournament in Sweden. There's going to be, for the first time, a tournament in Japan. There's a tournament in North Carolina. And there's tournaments in Brazil, not Brazil, Chile and Argentina.
Wow,
So
global.
that was one thing I kind of was looking forward to doing, but it's just a little bit too hard on my body right now.
We have to know our limits.
Yeah, so I'm having fun with the pickleball.
I think that's great. My local Parks and Rec department have an adaptive sports program, and I recently joined up and played gang ball, also known as murder ball, which is wheelchair rugby, indoors in a basketball court, and it is so much fun. And I've gone a few times. I am the only amputee, but everyone else is wheelchair bound in one way or another, and it's just been a lot of fun. I haven't heard a group of people laugh and get along so well in a very long time as we ram each other in our wheelchairs trying to steal the ball from one another. And it is just a hoot. I have personally fallen out of the chair that I've used multiple times because if I lean forward too much, I'm on the ground. It dumps me, and so that in and of itself makes me laugh. The only thing you have to worry about is getting your fingers smashed when you ram it into your other opponent. But it's been a great time. There's people of all ages doing it, and I'm thankful that they have that here locally. And that's something that I would like to admonish our listeners to look into what your local area has. There's something for everyone, and it doesn't necessarily need to be solely for amputees, but we are able to join in the fun and games as well. Just look out there and find out what there is. And with that, Sandra, I just really, really have enjoyed listening to you and chatting with you. You're a lovely person and you have a lot to offer. And I really appreciate your time today and sharing your experience and your views and your outlook, which is very positive and inspiring to me and hopefully to many of our listeners here at Amputee for Life.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. I hope that I had some tips that will help people.
You most certainly have. You most certainly have. And you've helped me as well. So I thank you again for your time and wish you the best of luck in your life and your life's goals and everything that is coming your way. I really hope goes well for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us today on Amputee for Life. Please stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, stay well, be safe, and please remember to enjoy the little things.